90 seconds plus with Invercargill City Mayor Nobby Clark. Let's get straight into it, Nobby. The infrastructure meeting on Tuesday, bit of debate and discussion over various things, including the naming of the museum, etc. So fill us in on that.
Yep. Well, good to see you here, Michael, and good to see you got rid of that red Labor Party hat that you always wear. So I don't know what the current teal colour means. It probably means you're swinging towards ACT. But no, look, we've had two papers up. One we've already had and one we're about to have next Tuesday. So the one we've already had is around the naming of the museum. I'm absolutely clear that the museum will be called a museum. So it'll be either Southern Museum or Murihiku Museum. I don't mind the Murihiku because that's widely known as meaning Southern. But we still have some debate about that. And we've left it with iwi to give us some advice on that, because Murihiku is actually more than just Southern. Their boundaries go right up to Queenstown and right up to the Waitaki and everything. So if they're happy with the Murihiku Museum logo, that's fine. They'll also come back with some te reo to put underneath it, so we're waiting for that, but we need to do that fairly quickly because we're doing a lot of promotion work. The other issue is the wider issue of how do you name buildings in today's environment, and it seems to me that while civic buildings used to be done in English, there seems to be a drift towards having te reo, but from my view the te reo has gone too far. So we've gone, a good example is Waka Kotahi, which is the New Zealand Transport Association, made a conscious decision that they'd use the te reo name only. So they're predominantly with that. You never hear them talk about NZTA anymore. And we've got Te Pukenga for the, what's the name, and we've got the Health Authority with Whata Ora, and to me that goes too far. So I've asked, and they're all government agencies, but for local government we don't have any guidelines on that. So on Tuesday I've got a notice of motion up that tries to clarify that. So my position is that we should have joint names. Those joint names should be of equal prominence when they're on the thing, not one at the expense of the other. It seems to be a lot of the te reo names are much larger than the English subtitle that runs underneath. I'm also putting up in that paper that when you look at a sign going left to right, which is the way we read, or going top to bottom, the English should be at the top of the page or at the left-hand side, and the te reo follows. So it can either follow or it can be underneath, both the same size, differentiation in colour if that's what you want, and sometimes in the font, but there's no preference of one over the other. And I think having both is fine, but it gets really confusing when we go as far as we've gone with this building, which is to call it Te Hanaki, which is the te reo terminology, civic building. People say, where the hell is that? They don't understand it's actually this building. If I have my way come Tuesday, on that notice of motion, we will revert that over to say civic building, or ICC, just those three letters, civic building, and Te Hanaki will follow either on from that or it'll sit below it, but they'll be both the same size. Our letter heading and a lot of our online stuff doesn't reflect that at the moment, and it's creating confusion, and it buys into a level of dissent in our community that people are saying the te reo language push is going too far. So we want to know going forward that when we rename our museum and we rename a new art gallery, that we have this all sorted out in advance, and that we don't have this constant debate and tension with iwi partners around what should or should not be there. And the final part of that paper on Tuesday is to say who makes the decision on what the te reo should be. In the past we've left that to iwi to do. We now want to have some conversation with them about what it is, because one of the downsides that I get feedback on is that Te Hanaki actually means eel pot or eel net, and that for some people doesn't give any relevance to what the building's all about, and so and it opens it up for a little bit of ridicule at times. So when we have these discussions with iwi and local rūnaka about signage, we want to have a position where we can come to some common ground and not be gifted something and then either have to take it with if we don't like it, or have to turn it down publicly, which wouldn't be good either. So we want to just do a bit more work together to make sure that we get the result that suits both parties.
Just while we're on that, because there's a good point there about, again, it's all very good because the Civic Building is where it's located at the moment. So how they define the name, I think you might have said they focus on the building and then make the name from that. But they need to sort of maybe think slightly different, because who knows, in a couple of years this may not be where the Civic Building is, or this council's based, or the Civic Building is.
And that's true. So there's two ways of giving a te reo name. One is to give a name that actually means a building. So you, for argument's sake, you might call it a new museum, Murihiku Museum, or you might interpret the museum into a te reo name as well. So it actually describes the building if you're fluent. The downside of all this is that when you look at the stats that we're currently getting, only 1% of the population is fluent in te reo. Another 2.7% is able to hold a conversation. So that means less than 4% of the population could physically interpret the name if they had to. So sometimes a lot of the te reo doesn't actually describe the building or the service. It just promotes some sort of bilingual sort of message that's not relevant to the building or the service. And we have a little bit of unease about that in our council ranks about doing the latter, that we would like it more to describe the building. So that's something we're trying to evolve as well. Because you're quite right, if we move to a new building, do we do it? I mean, a good example is the old Pyramid Museum was named, had an English title to it, but it had some te reo below it, and the te reo, when interpreted, meant it had whale teeth. And when you think of a pyramid and you step back a kilometre back and you look at the pyramid, you could actually see the idea of a whale, a whale's tooth. So I thought that was actually a really good interpretation. Yes. And we've had subsequent te reo names for the museum that involve means a multi-hulled canoe, and that's quite good too, because the message there is that it's really two cultures coming together, which I think is great. So it's just finding that sort of commonality. I don't think will be too hard, but it just avoids some of the stuff that we're getting at the moment that doesn't sit well with the majority of the population. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's really good. And to follow up on that, make sure you tune in on Tuesday for the live stream of the full council for the full council meeting. Kicks off at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, 27th of June. And of course,
you can watch it later on.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to watch it live. It's still available on YouTube, I think. So you can go back and look at the previous meetings and get a flavour for what actually comes out of it.
And don't forget, this weekend we've got the South and Home Show at ILT Stadium, Saturday and Sunday, 24th and 25th. It's a great bargain to get in, $10 for adults and $8 seniors, and children are free. Until next week, we'll see you then.